Hey, so I don't really know where I had this idea, but we're making Cap'n Crunch cannolis. So we've got shells that are made with Cap'n Crunch. We've got a ricotta filling that I made with Crunchberries. We made Crunchberry ricotta. That's super insane to me. So yeah, we're gonna make those. Now this is a pretty step-heavy recipe. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. So if you do try to make this, make sure you've got a good day set aside to make these. There's a little bit of finesse and technique that goes into some of the stuff we're doing, so be patient, follow along, you're gonna get it. Anyway, let's hop into it. Start by throwing some Cap'n Crunch into the blender. I'll be honest with you here, I didn't measure this out, so I don't know, 2 cups? Make sure to eat a handful of the cereal while you're doing this. Blend it into a fine powder and set it aside for later. Now let's bastardize Christina Tosi's cereal milk recipe. Lay out about 3 cups of Crunchberries on a lined baking sheet and toast at 300 degrees for 15 minutes. Allow these to cool completely, then pour them into a large pitcher, or in my case, the blender bowl, with about 4 cups of milk. Give it a good stir to ensure that all the cereal gets soaked and let it steep. After about 20 minutes, strain the milk from the Crunchberries and use a ladle or a rubber spatula to squeeze out the milk. Don't skip that part because there's a ton of flavor in there. Discard the remaining mush and realize that about 75% of you aren't subscribed, so do me a favor and click that button. It doesn't cost a thing and it helps me out tremendously. Now it's time to turn that Crunchberry milk into Crunchberry ricotta. You can use this exact method with regular milk to make regular ricotta, and it's way better than the store-bought stuff, so pay attention here. In a heavy-bottom pot or Dutch oven, slowly heat the milk, stirring occasionally to 185 degrees. You want to do this in something heavy-duty if you can, so that the heat transfers slowly and evenly, otherwise you run the risk of scorching your milk. I've done that, you don't want to do that. It'll ruin your day. Once the milk reaches 185, add 2 tablespoons of vinegar. This is typically done with white vinegar or lemon juice. Somehow I didn't have either of those things, so I used apple cider vinegar and it worked just fine. Now comes the tricky part. Give that milk a quick stir to evenly disperse the vinegar, then don't touch it. For the next 20 minutes, you want to maintain that heat, keeping it roughly between 175 degrees and 195 degrees, and allow it all to separate. Like most good things in life, this requires patience. Line a cheesecloth over a mesh sieve and strain the ricotta through. Again, be patient. It'll take some time for all of it to strain through. Keep the whey that's separated from the ricotta. It tastes like Crunchberries and we're absolutely going to use it. While you're waiting for your ricotta to strain, start making the dough for the cannoli shells. Add 125 grams of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of butter, and a teaspoon of kosher salt to a food processor and run it until the butter disappears. Then add 1/3 of a cup of cold water and continue to process until the dough becomes stringy. This will take a couple minutes. Turn the dough out onto a grease bowl and cover it. Let it rest for a minimum of 2 hours and up to 24 hours at room temperature. Hey, remember that whey I told you to reserve? Yeah, we're going to make a Crunchberry custard with it. Now, we have more whey than we're actually going to end up needing, so we're going to reduce it by half. Not only to minimize waste, but to actually intensify that flavor. Like the ricotta, you want to do this in a heavy bottom pan if you can. Bring the heat up slowly, stirring frequently to avoid scorching any residual milk solids, and also to prevent burning the sugar and caramelizing it to the bottom of the pan. You'll need about a cup of this in total, so don't reduce any further than that. While the reduction is cooling, dry whisk 2/3 of a cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of cornstarch, and a good pinch of kosher salt. Now add 2 egg yolks and make sure you save those egg whites because we're going to need them later. Then pour in 1 cup of the whey reduction. It's super important that you allow it to cool before adding it, otherwise you're going to cook the eggs prematurely. Whisk it all into a homogeneous amalgamation and think about how great of a band name homogeneous amalgamation is. Now we're going to temper the eggs just like you would with hollandaise. Place the pan over medium-low heat and whisk gently but constantly until warm. Now kick up the heat to medium and whisk vigorously for about 2 more minutes. The custard should begin to thicken and foam up. Keep whisking for another minute until it's silky smooth. Pull it off the heat and stir in a tablespoon of vanilla extract. Transfer it to a bowl and cover it with plastic wrap, making sure to push it all the way onto the surface of the custard to prevent that gross and honestly kind of awkward skin from developing. While the custard is cooling, rough chop a good handful of pistachios, or pulse them in the blender, I don't care. Toast them in a skillet over medium heat until they're fragrant, then melt in a knob of butter and stir. Transfer your nuts into a bowl, pour in a little bit of the Cap'n Crunch dust, and toss until it's all nicely incorporated. Set these aside, they'll be in the final step. Now that the custard is cooled, we want to mix it into the ricotta. You can do this with a stand mixer if you really want to mess with it, but I opted to just fold it all together with a rubber spatula. Take a deep breath. We're almost there. You're doing great. Dust your work surface with flour. Roll out the dough until it's roughly 1/16 of an inch thick. Brush it with those egg whites I told you to save for later. Or, if you're like me and you keep forgetting to buy a brush, finger blast it with egg whites instead. Pour the remaining crunch dust evenly over the dough. Roll it back up into a ball and roll it back out, again to about 1/16 of an inch. Use a ring mold, or if you're a normal person, a cup that's 3.5 inches in diameter to cut out cannoli shells. Roll the dough back out as needed to get as many shells as possible. If you have cannoli forms, great, but most of us don't. Go to the hardware store and have them cut up a dowel rod for you. Don't forget to grease the rods with a little bit of cooking spray or oil like I did, otherwise your shells are going to fuse to the rods in the fryer. Anyway, roll the shell around the rod and seal it with a little bit of egg white, like I forgot to do in this first batch. Heat up some shortening to 350 degrees and begin frying the shells in batches. See that little guy that's just awkwardly floating off the rod? That's why you seal them with egg wash. Fry until golden brown, remove to a plate with a lined paper towel, roll some more shells and repeat the process. Hey, it's the final step. Fill a large Ziploc bag with the filling and cut off one of the corners since you probably don't own a piping bag. Pipe it into a shell, then dip the ends of the cannoli into the pistachio mix. Since you're impatient, go ahead and eat this one before making the rest of them. Laugh at how such a stupid concept could create such an amazing finished product. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up there, it really helps me out. Maybe leave me a comment, let me know what you want to see next. As always, shout out to all my Patreon homies. Help me pay my bills every month. If you want to join the Patreon, get early access to content. And actually right now, what I'm doing is a Patreon exclusive AMA. So if there's anything you want to ask me, I will answer it on Patreon. So you can join for as little as $1 a month. Link in the description as always. Additionally, you can follow me on Twitch where I stream very irregularly. I don't have a stream schedule. And additionally, if you like posting, follow me on Twitter. If you like pictures of the cat, follow me on Instagram. I think that about does it for today. Love y'all. See you soon.